no UFC, no Bellator, no PFL, no Invicta. Like, there wasn't a lot going on, and those are very, very rare. There's usually a Cage Warriors here, a this, a that, but nothing really going on, and that's why it felt like all the focus was on Saturday night's Triller card in South Florida. It was supposed to be in Southern California, as you may recall, and it was supposed to be Vitor Belfort against Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya unfortunately got COVID. It sounds like he's doing much better now. So in walks Evander Holyfield, who is 58, who, if you just look at him from afar, doesn't move like he once did, doesn't talk like he once did, doesn't answer questions like he once did, and he's going in there against a guy who's 14 years younger than him, Vitor Belfort, 44 versus 58 in the main event of a boxing match that was deemed an exhibition, 8 rounds, 2 minutes each, but didn't seem to have the protection that the Mike Tyson-Roy Jones Jr. fight in November had, which was California saying, hey, if things get dicey, no knockdowns, we're going to step in, all that stuff. This seemed to be open season, Wild West, if you will. And so we had this situation where they moved the fight card from California to South Florida because the California State Athletic Commission, which I think is the gold standard in combat sports right now, I think that they are, you can poke holes, you could say this, that, but as far as right now being the most on point and ethical, I think it's California, and it's led by Andy Foster, who I've talked about time and again. I think he has it the most together, and they did what they had to do and decided that they couldn't sanction this. So we go to Florida, who of course sanctions this and says, please bring all your freak show fights, bring all your questionable fights, bring all your fights that make you uncomfortable, and hold them here. And so the fight card was moved on a week's notice to South Florida. Now, let me just say before I get into some of my thoughts on the past weekend, because again, this was a boxing card. I agree. Yes, on its surface, it's boxing. But like I said with Jake Paul, very much an MMA story, because 3 out of the top 4 fighters on this card, MMA legends, not just MMA fighters. It wasn't Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor up there. MMA legends. Vitor Belfort, legend. Anderson Silva, legend. Tito Ortiz, legend. Who's on the broadcast booth? Jorge Masvidal, legend. Junior Dos Santos, legend. Like, it felt like we were watching an MMA card, but they were just doing some boxing. And so let me just say, like, I root for the Trillers of the world. I root for the other promotions. Every promotion that pops up, I root for them, because I've always been a proponent of paying more, options, competition. All this is good. Same thing that I feel about in the world of pro wrestling, same thing that I feel about in the world of MMA. I've been talking about it in the world of MMA longer than I have anywhere else. In the NBA, if you fall out of favor with the Portland Trailblazers, you can go to 29 other teams. In MMA, if you fall out of favor with the UFC, how many options do you have out there? Now, some are popping up. You got Bellator, you got PFL, you got one. But you need options. And so I like the fact that there's a promotion out there that's giving opportunities to MMA fighters in particular to box and to make a hell of a lot of money. This is great. What bums me out about the whole situation is how I feel like they're misusing their funds, because clearly Triller is doing quite well. They're able to pay for the likes of, Evander Holyfield and Vitor Belfort and Anderson Silva and Tito Ortiz and Donald Trump Sr. and Jr. to be a part of the broadcast. And I'll get to that in a second. And all these other things, these bells and whistles, like, they're able to pay for it, clearly able to move the card and all that stuff. And so there's a part of me that wishes, like, man, if you've got those pockets, which doesn't happen often, those resources, you're able to think a little bigger. It's just a shame to be spending the money on these one-off fights that are going to get you nowhere. There is no point in investing in an Evander Holyfield at this juncture. And I know that was in the original plan, but even Oscar De La Hoya, these are all one-night stands. They're all one-offs. Can we try to build something? And I know their whole thing is it's a variety show and we're just, putting on these events, but you want to build to something. You don't want it to be viewed as the car crash promotion. You don't want it to be viewed as the promotion where, someone might get seriously hurt. And I feel like we watch these cards somewhat out of support, somewhat out of nostalgia, but also with one eye open and one eye closed because we're afraid of what's going to happen. I was afraid of what's going to happen. And I was open about the De La Hoya fight. I kind of come around to it. I was like, all right, they're around the same age. And I mean, it's not really something I'm clamoring to see, but, De La Hoya, legend, seems to be moving okay. I know he's got his issues, with substance abuse and all that stuff, but all right. But then when they bring in Holyfield, I was like, what is going on here? First of all, Holyfield's involved in a legal battle with them. Forget about that. Second of all, he is very old and he's got some, tread on those tires. And he doesn't speak the way he once spoke. And he doesn't move the way he once spoke. What are we doing here? And then you got Vitor, who's a very spry 44-year-old, a very large 44-year-old with his past as well. The whole thing felt uncomfortable. So when I was watching the main event, which eventually was won by Vitor Belfort in very quick fashion, less than 2 minutes, there was a part of me that was happy that it ended quickly, that it didn't get dragged out for 8 rounds of, Evander getting his head punched. But there was a moment there where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to see someone get seriously hurt. And I just don't feel like that fight should have ever happened. I don't feel like that fight should have been sanctioned. I don't feel like that fight should have been promoted. There was no desire to see that fight. And I saw my boy DC, shout out to DC, say, I don't know if he was trolling me or not. I didn't ask him, saying that there's no way Evander loses that fight. How do you look at him hitting the mitts and say that this is a fight that is actually going to be fair and competitive? Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. Shouldn't have happened. And so that's why I'm conflicted here. You want, great, Vitor, make the money. Triller, get your name out there. Give money to Teofimo Lopez, more than he's ever made. Give opportunities to Anderson Silva, who I'll get to in a second. You know what I'm saying? Do that stuff. All you want. But not this. I don't want to see a death. I don't want to see someone get hurt. I don't want to see an old guy who's a legend resort to this. And I hope that every young fighter who's in his prime and making money right now is watching that and saying, when I get to be 55, 57, 58, I don't want to have to resort to this, because there is a part of me that believes the only reason why else would someone do this is because they need the money, right? There has to be a way that these men and women are being protected and being taken care of and being looked out for in their prime, so that they don't have to resort to this when they're in their late 40s and mid 50s and late 50s and dare I say 60s. Who's next? Sugar Ray Leonard, is he coming back too? What's the appeal to all of this? So I don't think that should have happened. And then we get to the post-fight interview, and then I'm even more confused, because here's Vitor Belfort, who all week long, and again, I have no axe to grind with Vitor, legend of the game. We've had our ups and downs. One time he canceled on me at the last moment because I couldn't ask about certain things, but he was on the show very recently. He's a legend of the game, and I know the past is checkered, and I know that he's had, his issues with performance-enhancing drugs. We can't sugarcoat it, but make your money, man, in a fair and honest way. All week long leading up to the fight, prior to the fight, calling Jake Paul a Disney kid, saying that this is amateur versus pro, all this stuff. And who's the first name that comes out of your mouth when you beat Evander Holyfield? Which, by the way, the celebration was almost worse than Tito celebrating when he beat Chuck Liddell in that, disgrace of a fight. Because it felt like you're beating up a senior citizen. And then who's the name that you're calling out? The kid who's 20 years younger than you? Jake Paul? The one that you just dismissed for the past week, who you said was beneath you, who was a Disney kid, who was a YouTube star? That's the first name they were going to call out. And then the Triller guys come out and put a $30 million bet on the table. What is this? What is going on here? This is craziness. And let's not get into the walking contradiction of being in there and talking about Jake Paul after you were dismissing him all week in front of your family, cursing while, talking about Jesus. The whole thing was just one big contradiction, one massive contradiction. I don't want to see Vitor Belfort versus Jake Paul. I don't want to see that happen. I said that I wanted to see Anderson versus Jake Paul. I get the appeal, because Anderson, to me, at this juncture of his career, and by the way, he beat Tito Ortiz in a very, very quick fight as well, almost feels like the darling of the MMA community. His past has been forgotten about. People love him. It's a great story to see him go out on his terms. Honest Anderson, independent Anderson, having fun, moving like he's moving, all that stuff. He kind of feels like the final boss on this Jake Paul versus MMA journey that we're going on. This beloved legend will be the last guy. But let's not forget as well, Anderson is 46 and is moving pretty well at 46. Jake Paul's 24. So it is I know that it doesn't all equal, but it is somewhat hypocritical to say, I don't like the Holyfield fight against Vitor, but be okay with Jake Paul versus Anderson. Now, I get it. 24, 46 is different than 58, 44, but you get my point. Like if I'm Jake's people, you're on my radar, but I'm not signing up for that fight right now. Jake's still only 4-0 in all kinds of combat. That's it. How many fights has Anderson been in? That would make no sense. If I were them, I go for the Tommy Fury fight. You keep that in the back of your mind. Maybe in a year or two, you go after that one, but it feels a little premature. Now, they may get mad at me for saying that. It's not to say that I don't think he can hang with him, but it just seems way too premature to go for that fight. The Anderson story is a different one in the sense that people are loving seeing him happy. They don't like Tito. They were happy to see him, knock out Tito. And, I suggested that maybe there were some, shall we say, I don't know how to put this, questionable, moments in that fight. I talked to a lot of people who've been in the fight game. I've talked to a lot of people who have watched fights, and they shared the same sentiment as me. To be up in the corner like that, to throw those punches and to wait and then go forward and then the dramatic fall and then to not move during the 10 count, but then to jump up, once the fight is over, let's not pretend here that we're talking about a bastion of integrity. Let's not pretend like we're talking about someone who hasn't done just fought Alberto Del Rio in an MMA fight, let alone, has done let's not, I saw my boys and I saw Mike Bond write something about this on MMA Junkie, and I reached out to him, on text as well. I was like, hey, next time at me. Like, if you're going to say that I have never been the guy to cry, foul about a Bellator fight or I hate when that happens. Hate it. It's reckless. It's disrespectful. It's all those things. I have never been that guy, ever. But you're telling me you didn't watch that? Especially go look at the ESPN ringside clip taken by my guy, Omar Raja, and tell me that was not weird, him in the corner. All I'm saying, I was just raising my hand. Am I the only one who saw that? Taking a fight on super short notice, quick payday, in and out, and not suggesting at all that Anderson had anything to do with anything, because he felt like he was above all of that. But the notion that someone would just want to get in and out, why is that crazy? Are we all that naive? And it has nothing to even do with what the lines were or anything like that. In, out. It's like the old Job Squad once said, pin me, pay me. You get me? Don't be such marks. All I'm saying is I no evidence. I see what I see with my eyes. That seemed a little suspect. Am I the only one that didn't feel that or did feel that? But the truth is, the whole thing, you're watching it and you're like, wow, if there were young studs here, if there were names, up and comers, it's you get UFC every weekend at the Apex with the uniforms. It looks the same. It feels the same. It sounds the same. You get it every weekend. You know what? It's nice to have something else on the side. It's like my friend once told me about being married. He's like, you know what? You have chicken every night. Sometimes you like to have a little meat. Okay, I get it. Luckily, I'm not at that stage in my life. But you get what I'm trying to say here. It's nice to have a little meat on your plate when you're getting chicken every Saturday. And so this could be the meat. This could be the well done steak with a little ketchup. Hunt's, please. This could be it. But then you get these crazy fights and you're getting this and that, old guys and questionable finishes, quick fights, pin me, pay me. And then we get to the broadcast team. And I will admit, when they said the Trumps are going to be there, I thought, all right, they're going to call in like they did at the press conference. It's going to be, they'll be at home and they'll get a good line. They'll get a good ISDN line and it'll all be good. No, they were there. Both of them, senior and junior, the whole time for 4 hours. They were there longer than Jorge Masvidal was there. And my big takeaway from it all was, number one, and this is not me getting political, I'm just watching the thing. It could be any two people up there. Senior wants nothing to do with Junior, it seems like. He's not addressing him. He's not talking to him. He's not building him up. Junior loves Senior, building him up, deferring to him, all that stuff. Senior never addressed Junior, at least what I saw. Senior loves the fighters. JDS had a ball with him. Jorge had a ball with him. Kept the conversation going. Wasn't as big of a train wreck as I thought. Initially, I thought I wasn't going to listen to it. I ended up listening to it the whole time. And there's actually some kind of skill involved in all of it, because you have to, if there's no traffic cop there, there's no play-by-play guy there, you actually have to know what to do to keep the conversation going. So take it from me, broadcaster extraordinaire, veteran of the booth. Just kidding, of course. But it actually wasn't as bad of a, train wreck as I thought it was going to be. Yes, there were mistakes. Yes, it was, I would never advocate for this to be on a real broadcast. And you felt a little bit weird at times, like, am I listening to a political thing or not? But again, how many people bought the pay-per-view for that? And how much did those guys cost? Was it worth it? Is anybody buying the pay-per-view for this? Like, that should be what it ultimately comes down to. Are people buying the fighting pay-per-view, the boxing pay-per-view, the combat pay-per-view for this? You know what I'm saying? Are people buying the event for what we're about to spend a lot of money on? Like, even Michael Buffer probably cost, like, we lived through Affliction. We all saw it. They lasted 2 events. Different strokes for different folks is a good thing. But when you watch this, you're like, man, are they even going to be around for the Teofimo Lopez fight? Are they going to be around for the Thanksgiving card that they're talking about with Vitor fighting, Jake Paul? I don't know how Jake Paul could even do this. He's under contract with Showtime. Why would he even entertain this? Of course, we could talk about it later on. But there's just such conflicting feelings about the whole thing. Because it could be something. I will say, though, the production, it felt like it was a lot better in November for that first show. Even the second one, this one felt more like a smoker with like just some celebrities there. And from what I understand, not that many people there. But hey, hopefully they're if the game plan is, and I'd like to have Ryan Kavanaugh on this show, the head man at Triller. No beef with him. I hope that they're doing things the right way, kosher way, and are sustainable and healthy and profitable and all that stuff. I have some thoughts on the match. But I wouldn't mind having him on to just talk about, the mindset behind a lot of this stuff, the decision making. I just wonder what the long-term plan is. Like, are they here just for a few fights and then they're done? Or are they here for, the next 5, 6, 7 years? It's tough to stick around for that long if you're paying that kind of money to your guys. So, bit of an interesting one. Hope that Evander is okay. Definitely don't want to see a rematch. Curious to see where Vitor goes from here. I know he was in some contract stuff with the One Championship group, and so good to see him fight again. Hope that he's able to fight someone who's a bit more at his level. I mean, even the Anderson fight would have made or could make a lot more sense than this Evander fight. Anderson continues to be one of the feel-good stories of 2021, and it's amazing. Some guys get, branded with that PD brush for the rest of their career/lives. Anderson hasn't. God bless him. And people are just very, very happy for him. And I'll admit, I'm very happy for him too. He's coming across as very noble, as very martial arts, if you will. Like, it's just like everything about him, like not engaging in the nonsense. The zen is great. Like the vibe is great. Everything is great. Mike Heck on MMA Fighting did a great, great job of covering that card. So respect to him. And I don't want to see Tito Ortiz versus Logan Paul, but again, it's just like every weekend, Logan, Jake. And yeah, I'm curious to see where they go from here.